So we might not get through all the slides. This is just meant as a way to connect to each other and share. And it's perhaps important to repeat some group rules because we feel it's really important to create a safe space here together as a community. So I'm not going to read all of these out loud to you, but some very important rules are that we respect and care for each other. That means that we try not to interrupt and correct people's experiences, but we respect that all of our lived experiences are unique. That doesn't mean you can't share a contrasting story at all, but it does mean that we don't correct other people's stories when they share. We connect from a space of curiosity and kindness, and recognizing that the golden rule does not always fit. So we use the platinum rule: do unto others how others would like to be done unto them. And we like to practice reciprocity and interdependence, so we can support each other here. A little bit about me: I'm a coach for ADHD, but also a learning designer, and originally a media scholar. And I work a lot with ADHD people, but also with people with other neurodiversities. And something about Lana. Oh, you took your slide out. Is it because I'm presenting today that you didn't want to present yourself? Well, Lana's my co-founder in the Neurodiversity Education Academy, and she's got a lot of experience in community building and learning design as well. To get us started, would you please share in the chat, but also feel free to unmute yourself and share out loud if you would like to do that. And maybe Lana can pause the recording for a second. Would you like to share in the chat? That's something that really helped us build more interoceptive awareness, myself and my sister. So children learn interoception a lot through physically experiencing the world and disruptions to their body, whether it's in balance or in feeling hot or feeling cold or feeling like your muscles are getting tired, or being in situations where your heart rate and your breathing get out of the normal rate. There are 5 processes for building interoceptive awareness, and we will go through them step by step today to check in a little bit with what these are like for you. How do you notice and identify what's going on in your body? Are you able to check in with that feeling and articulate it and pinpoint it where it's happening in your body? Are you able to interpret what you're feeling and attach it to a need or a feeling? Are you able to think, reflect, and plan about what needs to happen in this situation, or what might make things better, or why you might want to stay where you are? For instance, if you're running, your heart rate and your breathing will go up, but a marathon runner really needs to learn to stay there where his heart rate and his breathing are up, and not go on automatic pilot and start to re-regulate, because they want to learn to push their body and win the race. So, and then how do you want to respond? By taking the necessary action. So those are the 5 steps of the interoceptive process. So far, any questions or remarks on this overview? Feel free to put that in the chat. If not,
yeah, I have a question. Is there any correlation, between safe sense of safety and having an ability to feel our inner sensation? Because in my observation, when I feel safe, I have a big capacity to monitoring my inside feeling, but when I don't feel safe in another places, or outside of the world, most of my attention directed to the outside. But when I disconnect with my body, it starts to begin overwhelming, and also I feel anxiety. My anxiety rate is increasing.
Yeah,
So,
there's actually
mhm,
not a very simple answer to that. It's not a yes or no answer. But what happens when we are get in a stressed state, that certain signals from our bodies get muted really
mhm,
strongly. So, for instance, our sense of hunger gets muted really strongly, our sense of thirst gets muted really strongly, our skin sensations, depending on
mhm,
the situation, usually get muted. But other signals, they get really cranked up in their sense of importance. So our breathing rate and our heart rate will be important signals. Just a second. Nee. Um, I so it's a little it's not so simple that interoception either goes down or up, but certain types of interoception get sort of more of a signal booster, and other ones are more downplayed, and that has to do with the fact that in a stressed state you start to really protect the core of your body. So all of your sensitive organs and your heart and your lungs are the most important to protect. So less interoceptive awareness will be in your outer extremities.
mhm. I'm actually trying to figure out the core reason of this disconnection with body and mind.
Mm-hmm.
If in my observation, babies are so confident about your sensations because there are caregivers taking care of them responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
But when they have experienced any trauma, I feel like they disconnect from their body. It's my observation from my son.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, he experienced an life-threatening level anaphylaxis. It was a really mind-blowing change for us because his behavior started to change. He started to seems very uncomfortable in new places. I'm supporting him, massage and occupational therapist, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like when I ensure him he's in safe, he can feel the safety, he will start to open an area to feel his inner feelings. But it's the assumption.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're working with some experts on this. So I cannot go too deeply into like individual cases here. We're doing sort of a self check-in with whomever's present here, and we're running you through the process of building more interoceptive awareness.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you're already doing amazing work with him to rebuild his confidence and rebuild better interoceptive awareness.
Mm, yeah,
Um,
I'm trying
Gulsha,
to restart. Yeah.
maybe I've shared in the chat something around allostatic load. So maybe this is something that it's another topic that we can get into
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
our,
Yeah.
but basically this is all about how our body responds to stress, and how the biological consequences of stress responses. So when your body is in threat, or when you're in body in fight, flight, or freeze mode, so there's some
Mhm.
biological responses, and this has something to do with what is considered to be allostasis. So I've
Mhm.
shared a link in the chat around that.
Yeah, yeah. As a mom, I'm trying to find the root as if I will solve this big case. Thank
Yes,
you
of
so much
course.
for the information.
Thank you. And I saw Stacy had her hand up, Saskia.
Yeah, she was already sharing in the chat as well that she got stuck in 2 and 3 a lot. We'll run through all of them in the following questions. So knowing that, Stacey, is there anything more you would wanted to share?
No.
Okay, thank you. So I encourage you all to get your favorite note-taking tools out and work on some of these questions by yourself, and feel free to share whatever you feel comfortable sharing. But starting with the first step of building interoceptive awareness, the noticing step. On a scale of 1 to 10, would you put in the chat how you would rate your capacity to notice and identify what's happening inside your bodily sensations that you experience throughout the day? I immediately am going to challenge this question for myself, because for me, that really comes with how focused I am on other things. So my noticing capacity could be a 0 when I'm in hyperfocus, or it could be at a 9 when I'm not doing anything else and needing to sit still. Then often my bodily sensations will come through like almost amplified. So they'll be very high. So for me, this is very much connected to where I am focusing on other things or not.
And just to welcome W, I'm guessing that's Wes, because I made the so welcome to our circle, our community gathering today.
Is there anybody that would want to share something around this? Paul already shared something in the chat.
Saskia, I can share something that was just very recent, just this morning while I was doing the heart scan, because they would ask you to lie down while this machine is on top of you. And all of a sudden, I just noticed my shoulders of like how tense the muscles were. And I was just like, oh, I didn't realize that I'm just keeping all that tension in the muscles while I was lying down, right? If you're lying down, sometimes you would expect that your body would just relax when you're lying down, but I just really noticed how much it's clenched too hard. So I was just telling myself, okay, soften, soften, soften. But it was in what's this? Yeah, just to notice that was something that I was like, oh, that strange, in terms of how it was clenched.
Yeah, I can share a little bit of a childhood story from myself. Thank you, Velana, for sharing. And I think that's so important too, that we often don't notice the tension in our body. That's something that my mom really helped me notice when I was younger, just by calling it out. And she was the kind of mom that would help us read a meditation before sleep, or do a relaxation exercise. And that has helped me so much in my life throughout, because this is really a challenge for me, the interoception piece. But I'm already noticing that when I talk to other neurodivergent people, I have a little bit more of a basis, because she did that with me as a child. And one of the things she helped me notice was that after a school day, all I wanted to do was get out of there. So I would always arrive home needing to go to the bathroom so bad that I was standing with my legs crossed in front of the door, trying to get the door open with my key and push my bike in, because I was always biking back and forth from school. And the awareness of needing to go to the bathroom was not even there at the end of a fully stressed school day. All I wanted to do was get home to my safe space. And I would not be checked in at all with the fact that I maybe needed to go to the bathroom before getting on my bike for a half-hour bike ride. Anybody else?
We have Stephen who has raised his hand.
Oh, I can't see all the participants while I'm screen sharing. So Lana, maybe you help me.
Stephen, your turn.
Yeah. Coming up with that number, it's a little difficult. I had to kind of even it out there. Because I find I have obsessive compulsive disorder. And if the sensation like relates to my obsessions and my fixations, I notice it like I have a hyper awareness of it. But that actually means that sometimes I don't notice other things sometimes. So coming up with that number, I'm sort of like evening out what my overall number would be. But that was something that I just want to share when actually trying to put a number on it.
That makes a lot of sense, Stephen. It's similar to what I already said, that depending on where my focus is, I can be really good at this or really awful at this. And so these exercises are all meant sort of to bring up that awareness for ourselves, even if it's connected to not being able to put a number to it, or the number becoming really meaninglessness, because we're sort of evening out really extreme scores, and so we end up with a 5. So it's about the conversation we have around it, not so much about the score in itself. So moving on to the next category then, how would you rate your capacity to articulate what's happening in your body once you start to notice some sensations? And this is one place where I'm grateful to my mom, because in helping me notice things as a kid, she also helped me build a vocabulary for things. And I'm still expanding that vocabulary. It was still quite limited, but that already was a huge help to be able to put words to it. And I notice this as well with my kids. Like if they're articulating to me, I have a stomach ache, I can help them look into the next step, which we're coming to in a second, to see like, okay, did you eat something nasty, or is it just nerves, or what's going on there? So some people are noticing that they've never really thought about this step separately from the whole process. So that in itself is also a good prompt to maybe go, okay, where, because the if you're struggling with interoception, the difficulty can be in any one of these steps or in multiple steps. And it's interesting to pinpoint where you might need to build a little bit more awareness or skill. Anybody in particular want?
Well, sometimes the challenge is finding the words to articulate. You know that something's going on, and you have to prod it in a few ways before the answer. The processing of it takes a while. Sometimes
Yes.
your brain is like doing rapid research, going scanning all through the pages, trying to work out what sensation is this. You know something's coming, and you just kind of got to wait for it to pop out of the system.
Yes, yeah. I am trying to work on that as well, because I notice that that's often a barrier, and we often leave people very little time to come up with an answer to this. So sometimes I'll do this with my kids. I'll say, okay, well, just think about it, feel into it, and come back to talk to me when you're ready. So leaving a little bit of a pause so that somebody can do their own processing, or you can do your own processing, like holding yourself with kindness and patience here is also really important.
Yeah.
For me, what I notice in the articulating step is that so many of our words about this are already connected to having identified the feelings or the needs that I sometimes struggle. So articulating on the level of just noticing the sensation and what the sensation is like, and not putting a story around it yet, is something that I'm trying to work on. Lana, what did you want to say?
I've been working on a document that has a list of sensations, just to have words. So I'll be putting it in the chat as well as a PDF so that you can access it. It's not yet the final document, but at least you can have I've in one of my hyper focus state, I just was like, I just want to know what are the list of sensations and how to have that as a vocabulary. So I'm gonna share it in the chat.
Thank you so much. Anybody else want to share a little bit more about this step before we move on to the next one? All right, then how do you feel about your capacity to connect to what's happening and figure out what feelings and needs are tied in with your interoceptive feelings?
I like what you said about giving people time, because I have found a lot of times I will say something doesn't feel right, and people put the pressure on me to say, well, what is it? What is it? What is it? Because they're in that, I guess, I want to fix it mode. And I can't articulate that. And it makes it more frustrating for both parties, I find.
Yeah, that I definitely would agree, and I think that's a wonderful thing to notice. It's part of a bigger sort of problem in our current society where people often have a lot of trouble holding space for uncomfortable feelings, and so they immediately want to move all through the circle so they can arrive at the solution and help you get rid of your uncomfortable feelings so they don't have to connect with your uncomfortable feelings. But they can just check that off as solved. So yeah, it's important to push back and create some more space for yourself. And sometimes that means pushing back against internal voices that are getting impatient with you because your brain is already predicting the outside world being impatient with you based off of prior experiences.
Yeah. I would like to pin on what you shared, Saskia, about the prior experiences, right? Of like, because our brain likes to do shortcuts. And when we're connecting also to feelings and needs, there's a tendency to connect to feelings and needs from previous experiences rather than the feelings and needs that is happening within the context of the now, right? So the tendency to overgeneralize also happens within this connection piece of like, hey, I'm feeling uncomfortable, I can feel my heartbeat racing, I can feel my muscles clenching, then maybe I'm angry. So it's like there's the connection piece also needs to be within the context of the here and the now, and how to be able to create that, that distancing also from previous experiences that would also make you to respond, which is the other, within the context of what is given right now.
Yeah, that was really important for me to realize as well. I can give a really personal example here, Lana, because I think this is where a lot of psychosomatic illness, and I'm not saying psychosomatic illness is not real. Psychosomatic illness is real. You feel the pain, you feel unwell, can come from. For me, what happened is that a period where I was really depressed in my life coincided with a period where I was not eating well, not taking care of myself. And so I had a lot of stomach issues. I had an inflamed stomach lining. I was constantly on stomach acid reducers. And so later in life, whenever I have stomach problems and I have stomach pains, I connect that to a depressed feeling. And in the past, before I was able to check with whether that was relevant to the context, I was having a stomach ache in right there and then, I would almost automatically start to feel depressed whenever I had a stomach ache. And not until I made that connection, like, okay, I'm automatically going into feeling depressed whenever my stomach starts hurting, but actually I'm not really feeling depressed. It's just like my brain is triggering that because it seems to have built a very strong neural connection. And once I knew that and started noticing it and gave myself a little bit of space and time every time I had a stomach ache, I was able to detach those two things for myself. Any more shares around this, or shall we move on to assessing? So how would you rate your capacity to assess what's happening inside you and think, reflect, and plan? So this is a little bit of the problem solving portion. It's not yet putting the problem, the solution into action, but it's thinking what solution would be fitting here. What might I need to do? How are these things connected? What's my assessment of the situation, and therefore what could I be doing to make things better? And again, if you're noticing here that that is dependent on other things, So at one point in life, you might be super great at assessing it. And in other states, you are horrible at it. That's also interesting information. I love it that somebody's pointing out in the chat that how other people perceive you doing this and how other people might score you might be different from how you score yourself. That's really a good addition. Sometimes that has to do with the fact that people don't understand our internal processes because they're very different.
I'm absolutely got the widest smile here. It's like, yeah, that was absolutely great meeting. And then other people go, what the hell? Like, la la la. So thank you for making me smile.
Thank you for bringing that in, Paul, in terms of this would be a great exercise, especially if you're as a couple or, you know, with teams, to understand each other better. Of like, hey, you know, let's talk about how how we understand our internal processes more.
Yeah, it's interesting for me as well to notice, like, I'm currently dealing with a lot of illness in the family and inner circle, and I'm noticing some people reacting to the stress but not being aware of it at all. So their assessments and responses are mostly based on practical day-to-day stuff, but they're not tuning into their bodies and the stress that's stuck in their bodies and how they're dealing with that at all. So I think I'm noticing a lot that they are not noticing themselves in those cases.
So I can give an example from my end here on the assessment piece. So I'm a highly sensitive individual. So for me, there's a lot of tuning in to not just myself, but also with the other. So if, say for example, in moments where I'm assessing more of what's happening with my husband, you know, so I'm just gonna give a context with my husband. So it's like looking at how his muscles are clenching, you know, like how is his eyebrows forming, you know, so even just the twitching of his what says of his lips. These are things that I can, you know, tune in so quickly with, and then try to have an assessment of, oh, is he feeling like this, you know, or is he feeling stressed, or is he, you know, so for me, being, yeah, hypersensitive, it's easy to see that immediately with the other person. And for myself, is I really need to create the time to notice it for myself. So that's why I have built in check-ins with myself, because yeah, the tendency to assess other people is so quick, but having it for myself, I really need to be more intentional in creating that space.
Yep. It's a reason I try not to skip my yoga classes, because that's one place that where no matter what happens throughout the week in my yoga class, I get to run through this entire process in peace without getting interrupted from other people's signals. So finally, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your capacity to respond what's happening inside you or to take the necessary action? And again, it's not just about a score, but just noticing what helps you respond and what keeps you from responding might also be interesting to talk about. For me, what keeps me from responding is very often things in the external context that seem more urgent than attending to myself.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed with my kids, that responding part, like similar to what you said, Saskia, of like when you get home, that's when you do, you know, when you go to the toilet and everything. That's what I keep on reminding my kids, to not hold it in, you know, what their bladder and their digestive needs, you know, like if you need to go to the toilet, you do that, because once you offset it, like say for example, if you need to poop and you didn't do that, you offset it, then it creates a different dynamics as well in the body. So it's just like, oh, the responding immediately is something that, of course, given the context, right? If they can do it at that time or not, but as much as possible for those type of, bodily responses, to once you notice it, is just to really give that an immediate response.
And in some cases, you need to respond almost proactively. So this is something that I really noticed in one of my children when they were really small. She had no capacity to respond proactively yet. So she would be extremely resistant to putting on a jacket before going outside into the cold. She would like throw a temper tantrum until the cows came home. But if I took her outside and let her feel the cold, then she would be like, okay, I'm putting my jacket on, no problem. But she had trouble building that sort of assessment ahead of time. Like, okay, this is going to be a situation where I'm going to get cold, so I need to put my jacket on before I go outside.
Oh, that proactivity is very important. Yeah, especially when you are in hyper-focus mode, then you forget to drink, you forget to go to the toilet, you forget to eat. So having that as part of, say, your alarm, that you have those breaks built in, that bio breaks, is very important.
Because yeah, we also often in hyperfocus we get stuck and we cannot stop doing things anymore. But because we're dehydrated and hungry and haven't had any breaks, it also makes it harder to stop. So we stay stuck in the tail end of the hyperfocus that is really not that productive anymore, and have trouble moving out of it and re-regulating our bodies with the things that we need.
I saw Stacy turned off her mic a while ago. So Stacy, what do you want to share?
Yeah, I just was going to say that sometimes with myself, it's like I have to go down the checklist like I did whenever my sons were babies. Okay, they're crying. What do they need? Are they hungry? Are they wet? Are they tired? Do they just need soothing? So sometimes I have to do those things with myself. I assess, all right, have you gone to the bathroom? Are you thirsty? Have you eaten? Are you tired? Things like that. So that's something that I have learned that works for me, just thinking a little bit back, like I said, when my sons were babies.
Yeah, that's a great share. And I've actually seen a lot of neurodivergent people share this type of a checklist for adults. And one of them that absolutely needed to be added to my checklist was, do I need a movement break? Because very often, given the type of work that I do, I'm stuck behind a desk all day. And that is really not great for my productivity. And it's when I started noticing that if I had an appointment outdoors somewhere in the middle of the day, that I got a lot more done during the day, that I started paying attention to building in more movement breaks. And now slowly that's become part of my checklist. If I'm feeling like I can't focus or I'm dysregulated, I'll run down the checklist, but movement break often is the answer for me. I'm glad that was a helpful addition to your list. So now that we've gone through all this, I'm wondering, what are some glows that you've been able to gather, some things that you're already doing quite well when it comes to your interoceptive awareness, some things that you can be proud of, and maybe find other contexts where you can use the same tricks or insights.
I've been working on breath work a lot, and I find a lot of times that could be one of the biggest things that keeps me from focusing on what other things are going on in my body. I'm like, okay, are you breathing? Let's just take some breaths, and then I can focus on what other sensations are going on in my body, and I'm able to address those a little bit better.
Yep, that's a wonderful tool. And I've also noticed that there are so many different breathing exercises, and finding the ones that work for you is also really important. So trying out many different ones until you find one that's a quick regulator, for instance. I really love the double inhale breath. For me, that works really well as a quick regulator.
I find diet really helps. If I eat too much sugar or drink a lot of coffee, then I'll have a tight chest, which in the past I could then attribute to me feeling anxious or stressed. Actually, I just had too much sugar. So managing that helps me then interpret it correctly.
Yeah, nice. That's a great one. Somebody wanting to maybe share one of their glows, something that they noticed while going through these questions where, oh, I'm actually doing that quite well already.
Well, to add what Stacy said, I am choosing when I'm drinking coffee, because I've noticed that if I don't make like a plan for that, then I'll just drink coffee because I really like it. And then my anxiety is a lot higher, and then my stress levels also, and I become just less of a nice person. So yeah, that's one of those things where I notice, the inner body having impact on your behavior as well. Yeah, so I want to add to that.
That's a great share.
So for me, eating slowly. I'm the slowest eater at home, and that has been very intentional, and I love it. The Japanese practice of hara hashibu, which is stopping when you're 80% full. And that for me has been like, oh, this helps me to really know, what's going on with my body. Of like, am I stuffing myself, or I'm just so this proactive of, okay, I'll stop when I'm 80% full, has helped me to to not overstuff myself.
That's a great
One more thing I wanted to add is often when I don't take good care of myself, I eat very quickly or drink very quickly. And so now I've taught myself, and I know it sounds silly, but when you make coffee, that I don't immediately take the cup, but instead wait until the dripping stops, because then my body will also slow down a little. And instead of me just go everywhere super fast, I allow my body to understand, hey, there's no need for speed here. You can relax, and that's a bit of self-love, even though it takes a lot of discipline not to immediately grab the cup and drink it like this. So yeah, that's one of my tricks.
It might be too much information, but it's the same when peeing. So one of the one of the female coaches that I've had the fortune to work with before, because she really works within women's energies, and she said, especially for women, our tendency not to pee well, meaning waiting till the last drop, is also important for us to notice in our bodies. And that has been a good practice, of the times when I do the hasty, okay, I'm done, pull it up, wash hands, to, okay, I take the time to do this.
Yeah, I can even add on to that. Someone who suffered a lot from UTIs as a kid, I learned that really early on, especially with what I described, coming home and not having gone to the bathroom before getting on the bike to school. What I learned is that when your bladder gets over full, you're actually putting pressure on your kidneys. So if you pee, even if you wait, you sort of have to try peeing again after you wait, because the flow of urine that was stuck in the kidneys before, because your bladder was over full, will have come down, and you'll still have a bladder that has bacteria laden urine in it, and you want to get rid of that if you don't want to get a lot of UTIs. So yeah, being very patient with your bodily functions is very important. And I would consider this one of my glows, even though it's a bit unsavory, perhaps. So what are some of your grows? What's an area that you would like to work on or practice on when it comes to this interoceptive awareness? What's something you've noticed during the sharings here where you go, oh, I could use a little more self-care with this?
I'd say the eating one that Lana mentioned is very clever with slowing down and being aware. I've read about that and I haven't managed to do it yet. I still eat really fast and move on quickly because with ADHD we eat for stimulation as well. So definitely moving towards trying to do that a bit more would be great.
But I've also noticed that the stimulation, if you really tune into it and slow down, you get more stimulation out of less food. So really paying attention to, I don't know, how the crisps crackle in your mouth and how the salt distributes across your tongue makes me sometimes satisfied with a lot less crisps than if I just cram the whole bag in my face.
For me, it is the realization that it needs constant discipline because I'm autistic, so often I don't feel it when I'm hungry, when I'm thirsty, all these kinds of things. And when I don't focus on that at all, then my energy level will go down because you're not taking care of your physical body well. So for me, it's like an acceptance that it does need discipline all the time, and it just won't come naturally, even though I can find many tricks. And that pragmatic realization also helps me.
Yeah, Paul shared something similar in the chat to sort of set an intention that when the body is flagging, I'm actually going to listen to it and take some action rather than push it down because I'm trying to focus on something else right now. I love that. I think that's a wonderful intention for a growth area.
I think for me, actually responding, kind of piggybacking off what Paul shared, you get the assessment, but sometimes my brain is like, okay, noted. I realize I'm hungry, but hey, other stuff needs to get taken care of. So moving on. And that moves me into a deeper space of, okay, I'm trying to tell you something. You really need to listen here. You're hungry.
Yeah. And once you notice that pattern, sometimes you can take proactive action. Like, for instance, I know that sometimes, not always, but more often now than before, if I am doing an activity where I know I might get stuck in hyperfocus and I might spend 4 or 6 hours there, then I sometimes prepare myself something that I can munch while I'm working, just because that's better than not taking care of myself at all. So in some cases, I will provide myself with easy snack food because I know I might get stuck in hyperfocus and not eat at all. So Lana and I wanted to draw your attention to our interoceptive awareness cards, which can help you build more awareness and focus on some of those growths or building out some of those glows that you shared before. They're available on the website through this link. Maybe Lana can copy it into the chat as well. And we'd be happy for you to use them or spread the word about them with other people that you feel might benefit from them. And lastly, I would like to ask you if there's anything that you would want to take away from this session. Is there any insight you gained, some feelings that came up, and is there an action plan for that one thing that maybe you wanted to take some action on moving forward? And if that's nothing, that's also fine. It's just a tool to help you make the most of these sessions.
Stop the recording now.